I think we can all agree that Tough Enough as a concept is a massive success. It took people like Andy Leavine, Josh Bredl, Sara Lee and turned them into massive household names, and it got me thinking, could we possibly run a successful wrestling promotion using exclusively Tough Enough alumni and no one else? That's what we're going to find out in today's video. I'm using Extreme Warfare Revenge because I couldn't find any data for TEW that had all the old Tough Enough alumni, so there are a couple of exclusions even still, and I'd like to pay tribute to those people before we get started. So, first of all, there was Hank. Always the hammer, never the nail. That's what he used to love saying, because he unironically thought that was a really good catchphrase for some reason. He also took the piss out of ZZ for finishing last in one of the physical challenges, and I'll never forget it, because he turned around and goes, ZZ finished last, even the women beat him. And Paige was just sitting there like, what the fuck? And he got sent home on the first day. But then, no, Alex, right? This lad is one that I'll never forget, because he did Tough Enough and he knew nothing about wrestling, and was unapologetically knew nothing about wrestling, because he was called out for it and he got absolutely slaughtered in the argument.
History's history. It's what happened. I'm here to start a new age. In order to start a new age, you need to know the history. That way you don't repeat it.
But as he was getting roasted over not knowing anything about wrestling, you just know in his brain it was like,
don't back down, double down. Don't back down, double down. If you show any weakness, if you apologise or try to explain yourself, they'll see it as weakness, they'll smell blood, and down you'll fucking go.
You don't go to the NFL and not know who Ray Lewis is. Yes, you do. Knowledge means nothing.
Oh. That was the dumbest statement I've ever heard.
There was also Deanna, who hated wrestling and just fucking quit after 2 days. But other contestants who were essentially just as fucking useless as Deanna were people like Mada, Georgia and Tanner, who had absolutely no interest in becoming wrestlers before doing Tough Enough and have had no interest in becoming wrestlers since Tough Enough. But the judges would see them do like, they'd swim really fast, and the judges would be like, wow, athleticism, that is such a rare trait. I've never seen athleticism anywhere else. You could be the next WWE superstar. And then there was ZZ. This is a company that we've set up. I've given it basically the same money and the same size as WWE to see if we can compete. I've made the risk level 100%, so that way we can do death matches and fun things like that. Merchandising 100%, that way we can sell all the Ryan Howe t-shirts that we want to sell. Production values are obviously 0 because production doesn't matter. It's not about the production or the lights, it's about wrestling. The only people that are willing to sponsor us are Penthouse and Playboy, but I think once we get this under control and we're putting out good shows every week, more sponsors will hop in, so I'm looking forward to that. But now it's time to hire some staff. There's a number of different staff who I feel are notable and people who we should possibly consider hiring. For example, Steve Small, who does production. Am I seriously immature enough to hire somebody as staff just because their name makes me laugh? Yes. Bruce Buffer is also there, which I find quite interesting. But when I was deciding on who to bring in for production alongside Steve Small, who do I see? Only former Tough Enough winner, I believe, Chris Nowinski. So I think by law he has to come in. There's also Mark Malaria as part of the writing staff. I'm a big fan of his. You know, he's probably up there with Simon Swineflu and Connor COVID as like the best writers going at the minute. Billy Corrigan is available as a road agent. He's hired. I'm bringing in Holly Hearst on commentary. The fact that she is the cheapest commentator available is purely coincidental. I'm just a really big Holly Hearst fan. And for the medics, like, I'm just going to go with the cheapest as possible. I mean, anyone can be a doctor. It's not really that impressive. They can't wrestle, so I'm just going to pick whoever. Nurse A, yeah, that sounds fine. For the titles, I've gone with Tough Man and Tough Woman as the title names. That way the fans know that whoever holds the title is quite tough. Obviously, it's not easy deciding on what network to go for. I've decided to go with Comedy Central. I think perhaps we could be a good fit there. And they also allow 100% risk in their graveyard slot, so that's cool. These are some of the monthly pay-per-view events that we'll be hosting alongside our TV. In terms of our ticket prices, we're going to be charging the highest price possible for absolutely everything. You know, we are providing a top-tier product, so we want a top-tier price in exchange. What's gas about this though is that like it's based in 2016, so WWE are just like firing future stars and they're not aware of it at all. Like Bayley, Charlotte, Asuka, Becky, Eric Rowan. Could you imagine if they fired Eric Rowan? They surely wouldn't do that because that'd be an incredibly fucking stupid thing to do. Before we begin for the big event, I think we get a world famous rock band into play. I think that's a really, really good idea. So here's the rundown of our first show. So for our first show, we'll be having the first round of the Tough Woman tournament to crown the first Tough Woman champion on Tough Enough. Right. The first of these matches is Kaylee Turner versus Rima. If you don't remember Rima, she was basically a former Miss USA, and she was just really, really good. So she wins, and Kaylee Turner is the first person to be eliminated from the tournament. After the match, Cameron comes out, and she goes up to a beaten down Kaylee Turner, and she says, Melina and Alicia Fox are my idols, and Alicia Fox is your sister, and you've let her down, and that's bollocks. You come from wrestling royalty and you've let your whole family down. I hate you. Mandy Rose takes on Ivelisse, and I know Ivelisse, a bit of a controversial figure these days for reasons I can't show you, or AEW will come to my house and kill my family, but she's gonna win, right? And it'll all make sense later, trust me. Mandy Rose is eliminated from the competition. Then Sonya Deville takes on Gabby Castrovinci, and Gabby wins, so Sonya Deville is now out of the competition. Then Chelsea Green takes on Cameron, and Cameron wins. So we are down to our final four. But the main event is a non-tournament related event. It is the two winners from the final season of Tough Enough, Josh Bredl and Sara Lee, going one-on-one to find out who the real winner of that Tough Enough season was. And it's Josh. He absolutely destroys Sara Lee. But then, who comes out at the end of the match? Only none other than season 5 winner Andy Leavine, and he squares up to him and he's like, you and me have a scrap next week to see who the real tough man is. So yeah, the show got off to a really good start with Kaylee Turner versus Rima, and I was really happy with it. I feel like that momentum was maintained for the entire show, and I'm really happy with how it turned out in the end. Raw ended up getting 7,000 people in attendance, which is fine. We ran head to head with them. We got 630. So well done to everyone involved there. According to Billy Corgan, Mandy Rose and Ivelisse didn't click. I think that's because we haven't put them against each other enough. So I'm going to take note of that moving forward. Build our chemistry by having them face each other a little bit more often. We've also got a new boss. I don't know who he is. Sara Lee wants to be paid more, and as one of our biggest stars, that's perfectly okay with me. We've got interest from Comedy Central. They've given us a primetime slot on Monday, so the Monday Night Wars are back, and I'm feeling very confident. For our second show, we're going to start with AJ. For those of you that don't remember AJ, he actually did really well because he ended up doing everything so adequately that he never stood out for being particularly spectacular or particularly shit. So they kind of just forgot he was there, and he ended up doing really well. So I kind of admire AJ for that. But regardless, he opens the show with a pipe bomb. He comes out to the ring and he says, I'm AJ, and you had the audacity to do our first show without me. This company is bad. And the fans are absolutely stunned. Then we have our first semi-final. Cameron takes on Gabby and wins, so Gabby is eliminated from the tournament. Eric Watts makes his debut on this one as he takes on Kenny King. He's going to win this match, even though Kenny King is not too pleased about it. After the match, though, Eric Watts comes out and he's like, I'm Eric, and I'm big and strong, and he like asserts his dominance with a really good promo like that. The other semi-final, Ivelisse versus Rima. Rima wins, and I know you might be thinking, Kian, Rima's stats aren't really that great, but at the end of the day, I'm a big fan of Rima. I think she'll go very far. That's her final. But after the match, Mandy Rose comes out, and she says, right, Ivelisse, we both lost. Let's have a rematch next week. Cool. The main event, Josh Bredl versus Andy Leavine, goes to a 60-minute time limit draw. And then after the match, Taz comes out and he says, right, let's put the Tough Man title on the line next week in a rematch. And everyone's very excited. As you can see, the opening segment was an absolute banger. The people really wanted to see AJ, and I think he held up his end of the bargain. And the Taz segment at the end got us the sex number, which is very funny. But that's not the sex number. That is the number of the number that the overall show got, which is an improvement on last week. So we're doing really well here. Raw got a rating of 6 point. I can't see that because I'm too far from the screen, but we got a rating that's almost as high, so we're not doing too badly. The attendance is slightly lower, but it's not something to worry about. Comedy Central aren't happy with our production values, but it's not about the production, it's about the wrestling, and they'll grow up soon enough and realise that. And they're not happy with our risky nature, but you know what? That's who we are. We are tough enough. And of course, Andy Leavine and Josh Bredl work well together, but you never doubted me on that one, did you? The next show opens up with Taz in the ring. I forgot to mention Taz is our general manager. I probably should have established that at one point. He's a former trainer on the early seasons of Tough Enough. He shows up and he says, AJ, you're fired. Then we get into the next match. It's Eric Watts against Matt Cross. Eric Watts gets another win under his belt. Then Mandy Rose against Ivelisse, and Ivelisse wins. And Mandy Rose is fucking snapping. She says, right, I've had enough. You and me, next week, 10 stages of hell. And Ivelisse is like, are you sure you don't want to pick an odd number? A 10 doesn't seem like it's very... we're doing 10. Then we get the rematch, Josh Bredl versus Andy Leavine, and again, it's a draw. But not really a draw, rather a no contest because of interference from yet another winner of Tough Enough, John Morrison. And he completely ruins the match, and then Taz says, alright, if that's the way you want to be, next week we'll have a triple threat then for the title. Fucking hell. In the final of the Tough Woman tournament, Cameron takes on Rima. Rima wins. But why does Rima win? Because Kaylee Turner interferes, gets her revenge, fucks Cameron over in the final, does it for her sister, and overall a really, really solid show. So now it's time for our next show, and our next show is just dedicated to Ivelisse versus Mandy Rose in their 10 stages of hell. The first one, we're starting off strong, it's an Inferno match, and Ivelisse wins. Then we have one of the most grueling match types in history to follow that, the special guest referee match. In this case, the special guest ref is Kenny King. He calls it down the middle and Ivelisse wins. Then we have a submission match. Ivelisse wins. Then we have a ladder match. Even though there's nothing at the top of the ladder to grab, Ivelisse still manages to win. So now it's 4-0 to Ivelisse. Our fifth match is a cage match. And what happens here is Ivelisse gets on top of cage and then falls off the top of cage. And then when she falls off, Mandy Rose is like, oh shit, this is an opportunity, and she pins her and gets her win. Then it's a last man standing match, but Ivelisse is still hurt from falling off cage, so she doesn't get up in the 10 count. Mandy Rose wins again. Then it's a falls count anywhere match, then a death match, then a regular old singles match, but because Ivelisse isn't getting up, Mandy Rose just pins her over and over again. So now it's 5-4 to Mandy Rose. We're getting into the final stage, and it's a tables match. And in this tables match, Mandy Rose sets up the table, but Ivelisse gets up behind her and pushes her into the table, and it breaks. So it ends 5-all, not particularly conclusive. But after the final stage, Mandy Rose says, alright, we are not ending this on a draw. I challenge you to stage 11. And then the show goes off air because it's only 2 hours long. It started off quite strong, but they were quite unprofessional by the end of it, and their bodies couldn't handle the 10 stages of hell, which I'm a bit disappointed in, if I'm not going to lie. 35% should be approximately 100, but again, they're a bit unprofessional in that regard. Not very committed, I feel. According to Billy Kidman, the fans were getting sick of us using Mandy Rose and Ivelisse, but I don't really know who to believe anymore, because it just seemed like such a good idea to me at the time. We're also apparently in a battle with TNA because we dropped down to national level, but I have full faith that we'll beat the shit out of TNA and we'll be back up to global in no time, because we opened the show with one of my favourite contestants of season 5, Ryan Howe. And if those of you don't know Ryan Howe, right, basically he was given an awful time in the house by this bald lad called Michael Zaki, right? His head isn't actually that shape. He's actually wearing a black hat on a black background, which is why his head looks a bit odd. He has a normal head, but the point is, Ryan Howe didn't get on with him. He ended up tearing him to shreds in a promo that got Michael eliminated, which is a bit of a laugh. But in storyline, Ryan Howe is still pissed at Michael Zaki. He wants to scrap him, and he says, you know who you are, you big bald bastard. Come on out, let's scrap you, piece of shit. Who comes out thinking that Ryan Howe is talking about him? Former Tough Enough Season 4 competitor, Ryback. He comes out, he flattens Ryan Howe, pins him 1, 2, 3 with ease, and we go backstage. And backstage, Sonya Deville goes up to Mandy Rose and says, hey, perhaps we're better off working together as a team instead of as individuals. What do you say? And Mandy Rose says, if you can beat Ivelisse tonight, I'll say fuck it and we can be a tag team. Eric Watts then takes on Marty the Moth and beats him. But after he beats him, who comes out? Fucking Ryback. And then we get a big man dream match before the following match, which is Sonya Deville taking on Ivelisse, and if she wins, she gets to team with Mandy Rose from here on out. And she does, because Ivelisse hits her over the head with a chair that I forgot to Photoshop into her hands. Ivelisse wasn't particularly arsed with the match, didn't mind losing. Sonya Deville got battered, but she still gets the tag team in the end. Then we have a segment with Cameron and Katie Turner in the ring. One of them challenges the other one to a fight. I can't remember who because I forgot to write it down. But one of them challenges the other one to a fight next week, so we're getting that. But in the main event, a triple threat for the Tough Man title. And the winner is John Morrison because of interference from The Miz. Of course, a Tough Enough runner-up in his own right. It says that Eric Watts is losing over this because of his weak gimmick, but I don't see how that makes any sense because he's a heel, big friendly giant, you know what I mean? So he's nice and friendly, but he's also a massive dickhead. It's like very complex, very good writing on my part, very in-depth. The next show opens with another Eric Watts appearance as he takes on Ryback. Ryback wins. But after the fight, who comes out and beats the shit out of Ryback? Ivelisse. And Ivelisse says, I want to fight you next week. But in the meantime, Sara Lee comes out and she challenges Rima for her title because Sara Lee, you know, she wasn't in the tournament, never got eliminated, won the last season of Tough Enough, so she has a solid enough argument for a title shot and she gets it. That's for next week. But for now, Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville team together for the first time against Gabby and Chelsea Green. They get the win. Then Cameron takes on Kaylee Turner. Cameron wins. Josh Bredl teams with Andy Leavine to take on The Miz and John Morrison. And the winners are The Miz and John Morrison, but only because of interference from Luke Robinson. For those of you that don't remember Luke Robinson, he was basically a mini Miz, so we're just going to put him in with The Miz anyway and see what happens. I had a feeling that Sonya and Mandy's debut as a tag team against Gabby and Chelsea would steal the show, and I was actually dead right. That was probably the highlight of the event. Overall, it was a really good show. Sophie's telling me that our poor performance is affecting the workers' morale, but it is their own fucking fault. My booking has been absolutely world class, so I don't really know what they're moaning about. Ryback takes on Ivelisse, and this is what I really think is going to sell tickets, because obviously Ivelisse at the minute is very popular. Ryback as well, very popular, despite what all the trolls were saying. Nobody wants him to retire. They all want him on every show, and that's why the vote got diluted and Retire ended up winning. Ivelisse beats him despite the fact that he is absolutely fucking snapping about this. But backstage, somebody has attacked Luke Robinson and nobody knows who it is. But in the next match, Mandy and Sonya team up to take on Ryan Howe and Matt Cross. And Mandy and Sonya win. But after the match, they show up and they say, Taz, we want those tag team titles. And Taz comes out and he says, we don't have any tag titles. Oh. In the main event, we get a rematch of what we had last week. It's Josh and Andy against The Miz and Morrison. But this time, Josh and Andy have a lot at stake because if they win, they get to fight among themselves for another title shot. If they lose, they don't get another title shot again. But they win because of interference from Ivelisse, whom they struck a deal with. So she attacked Luke Robinson, so Luke couldn't interfere this time. And in exchange for her assistance, she now gets to fight for the tough title shot as well. In the meantime, Sara Lee takes on Rima for her title. Rima wins, only for Cameron to come out after the fight and beat the shit out of her. What a main event. What a card. At the next show, Cameron officially challenges Rima for her title. Then Sara Lee takes on Kaylee Turner. Why? Because you need to have a minimum of 4 matches or something like that according to Extreme Warfare Revenge rules. Matt Cross takes on Ryan Howe. Ryan Howe beats him, and then after the match, Ryan Howe says, Ryback, I want a rematch. Mandy and Sonya team up to take on Kenny King and Eric Watts. They win, and then they say, Miz and Robinson, we want a scrap. The main event, of course, is the number 1 contenders triple threat match between Josh, Andy, and Ivelisse. The winner is Ivelisse. Now, I don't have the gameplay that shows the numbers that we got for that week. It was 100%, I can assure you. There's no visual evidence, but you can trust me. Main event, Mandy teams with Sonya Deville as they take on The Miz and Luke Robinson, and they beat The Miz and Luke Robinson. Afterwards, Taz comes out and he says, you know what? Maybe we will bring in tag team titles, and maybe the 4 of you will compete again next week, but with gold on the line. Ryan Howe taking on Ryback, and Ryan Howe beats Ryback in the rematch. And then Taz comes out and he says, how about we settle this one for all in the trilogy fight? Ryan Howe versus Ryback, feed me more rules. The winner is the one who eats their opponent. Then Cameron takes on Rima for the title. Rima retains yet again. Then Ivelisse takes on John Morrison for the Tough Man title, and she wins. But after the match, Rima comes out. She demands a title versus title unification match. So that's what we're getting on the next show. The Feed Me More segment was an absolute hit. I knew everybody was going to love it. And John Morrison absolutely fucking dropped the ball in the main event for no reason whatsoever. Billy Kidman even said that we used John Morrison too much on the last show. You know, that's obviously something we need to look at going forward, but I don't think it's going to be an issue because John Morrison left. The Feed Me More match, of course, an absolute success. Ryan Howe wins. He eats Ryback's head. Mandy and Sonya, finally, after all the wins they've been accumulating over the last couple of weeks, they get their shot at some tag team gold, and Miz and Robinson win. But in the main event, title versus title, Ivelisse versus Rima, the winner is no one. The match gets thrown out because of interference from AJ, who says, "You can't fire me. I'm AJ, and I'm not happy at being fired." So obviously that's a really, really good cliffhanger to leave people wanting more. Nobody showed up for this event, and we failed cult level, and the owner quit. But besides that, I'm really happy with how we've booked things. I have no more ideas.